March is Women's History Month. All month long, we're looking at women making waves and making a difference in their communities. Aiana Fadina planned on becoming a doctor, but fate had other plans. A modeling scout discovered her in Philadelphia, and soon she was modeling for top fashion designers in Paris and London. Now she's the CEO of the parent company of Eye of Africa, a show that celebrates innovation, inspiration, and individualism on the African continent and throughout the diaspora. Welcome, Aiana Fadina. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here. Your story is amazing. You were a pre-med student, you were working at a biotech, you had a whole career path mapped out, and then what happened?
Life happened, and I embraced it. So I was, like you said, I was on the hopes to become a medical doctor. And at the time, I worked for a biotech firm, just selling heart devices, sort of buying pastime as I studied for the MCAT. So I was at a club in Philadelphia for my sister's 21st birthday, and a designer walked up to me and said, "Hey, do you model?" And initially I was slightly insulted. I was like, "No." And he was like, "Okay, I'm doing a show. Do you mind doing the show for me?" I'm like, "Absolutely." Did the show and had an amazing time. It was the first time getting super dolled up, got my hair done, makeup, and learning to walk in heels properly. Shortly after, I got signed to an agency in Philadelphia. And within 6 months after that, I moved to New York to embark on the new journey of life.
So we hear so many stories about how hard that New York scene is and how hard it is on young women and young men who really want to try to make it. What was your experience?
I was lucky enough to be, I was about 23, 24 when I started.
So a little older than some.
I was a little bit older. So my sensibility as an adult was already set into place. And it was also a break before grad school. So I knew it was a little break, and I didn't take it as seriously in terms of when you're 16 years old and you're sucked into this lifestyle, you're identified by what you look like. For me, I didn't visualize myself in that perspective.
You had a whole other persona, a whole other person.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to have friends that I went to college with, and that's why I hung out with in New York. So I had my modeling life, and then I had my life with my friends who were bankers and lawyers and consultants. So I didn't get sucked into the whole, meat packing New York lifestyle. So I was very mindful about that, and I knew what home I came from as well too.
But you still faced challenges.
I did. One of the huge challenges I faced that a lot of models of color face is that I knew that I was getting 1/3 less than my white counterparts were.
You were getting a third less.
A third less.
So
a third less.
To be clear here, we're talking about you versus white women, not white men. So
white
it's
women.
White women. So it's a real race disparity, and it's not a gender disparity we're talking about.
And that's why, for me, when it comes to the discussion about diversity, where's the discussion about inclusion when we're talking about these things? Just as if I'm going to fight for equal rights with men, let's engage in discussions as women. What are we talking about here?
So when you learned you were making that much less than your white colleagues, what did you do?
I confronted my agent, a white woman, and I said to her, "This is what I found out." And she said, "Well, be lucky that you're there as a black girl." Wow. And her explanation was, "Well, they book you all the time, so you end up making more than they do anyway." And it was true. I worked overtime a lot because I worked hard, and it was cheaper for them to hire me. And based on her response, I was not happy about that, and I went to the client directly. I spoke to the client, and they apologized about it.
Okay, so take me through that conversation, because the client was someone in the fashion world.
Oh, absolutely. Huge names.
Big names.
Yeah.
And so you went to the client, and what did you say to them?
I was just, I always say I'm a Fadina, so my parents have always said, stand up for yourself. So I went to the client, the person that books the models, and I was like, I've learned that the other girls were getting paid more than I was getting paid, and I wanted to find out what was happening. And her response to me was, this was the price that your agent negotiated for you to get you in the door.
Right.
Yes.
And so first off, did you stay with that agent? And second, did the clients address the difference?
Yes, the client immediately addressed the issue. And within the next time I was on there, we got paid the same rate. And the relationship did not change with the client. However, it set a precedent with the agency to the point where it became sort of tumultuous. And it was not the pleasant experience. And shortly after, I left her agency because I just felt that if she could not stand up for me, and if her response was that be lucky that you're there as a black model, and I'm like, if you say that to my face, what are you saying to clients about me? Right. And it was tough, but as I said, my parents always said, you always have a place to come back home to. but my clients stood up for me, which till today, I'm still in contact with them, even after not modeling with them anymore.
And what about other young black women who were in a similar position? Did that change for them as well?
It did. It did. I think when the clients realized that, okay, there's a conversation that's happening amongst models, let's do better. And also with agencies as well, too. When I left the other agency, I went to a new agency. This was something that I made known, that I do not want to walk into a job and realize that I'm getting paid, or other black girls are getting paid less than their white counterparts as well, too. So I was kind of an advocate from when it comes to compensation and equality and fairness.
So what made you make the transition away from modeling?
Well, modeling was supposed to be a 2-year break before grad school. 2 years became 12 years.
Right.
Yeah. So I was extremely lucky to have amazing clients. I worked in-house as a fashion model, so I really understood the logistics operations of the business. I saw things from ideation to when it got in the hands of the consumer.
Okay, so let's take that a little bit one step at a time.
Sure.
So when you say you're an in-house model,
Right.
how are you part of the creative process?
So when they sketch, you're right there. When they make the pieces for the fashion shows, they build the collection onto your body. When they sell the clothes to Bergdorf Goodman, Neiman Marcus, Harvard Nichols, Harrods, you're the model that they use during the sales appointments. When we go and do trunk shows in the stores, I was the model that they used as well too. When we did production for the stores, because what you see on the runway is very different from what you see in the stores, I was the model they used. So I really understood sort of the whole 360 perspective of the fashion business.
So how did you take that and use that?
Well, being a Nigerian a hustler, I started consulting for emerging fashion brands who were sort of looking to scale their businesses or looking to come to New York and get into retail. And I advised these brands, like, okay, these are the things that I'm learning from the big brands that I've worked for. Why not go direct to consumer? The internet is changing the way in which garments get to the consumer. So rather than focus on retail strategy, get to your consumer through the digital space. And with one designer, for example, he made amazing dresses, Shemaya Benitier. And I said to him, there are like 5 huge weddings in Nigeria, in Lagos, every weekend. Why not serve that client versus trying to get into Bergdorf Goodman in New York?
Right.
So he was a London-based designer at the time. So.
And what's the idea between Eye of Africa?
So Eye of Africa started because living in New York, I had all these phenomenal friends who were doing amazing things. And I said to myself, you're 1 degree of separation from these people. In addition to that, mainstream media has a very monolithic narrative about what Africa is, who Africans are.
Right.
And I felt that I was the one that could make that change. So that was the idea behind it, to celebrate innovation, individualism, and people who are inspired by the continent, and also to connect the diaspora to the continent as well too. There's this sense of distinction about who we are, but I'm like, how do we build bridges and engage in conversations that inspire each other? As blacks, we have ports everywhere in the world. What are we doing to embrace each other?
So when you talk about innovation, where do you like to focus?
Anything. I see innovation in clothing. I see innovation in technology. I see innovation in storytelling. I don't focus only on technology. There's a misconception that, you know, innovation has to be tied to tech. And like for me, it's anything. So that's when I say innovation, it's anything that's new, anything that's fresh, anything that's disrupting the status quo is innovation to me.
And who do you think your audience is?
That's an interesting, when I first started, that's an interesting question. I thought it would be people on the continent. I realized that about 45% of my audience is actually based in the States. And then in Western Europe, and about 1/3 is based on the continent, Nigeria being a bigger portion of that.
And how do they access your content?
Through YouTube. So initially, we are, the first 2 seasons, self-funded. You know, I was like, okay, let's just do a beta test and let's see if there's an audience here. And the 3rd season, which is coming out shortly, within 2 months, hopefully, I raised capital for that, and we have 15 episodes. We have Marcus Samuelson, we have Jadena, I have the founder of Hopstop, Chinedu Echero. I have an investor that invests in tech companies and new startup ventures. So yeah, so it's YouTube is our medium at the moment.
So you've gone from being somebody who understood the fashion business and being able to consult about the fashion business into becoming a media entrepreneur, and now a venture capitalist, because now you're out there, you're raising money.
Well, yeah. For myself,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. It's been an interesting experience, and I think applying to business school, I'm currently in an executive MBA program at Kellogg, Northwestern, and it's just been such a rewarding experience. And I think it was kind of going back to like my parents, for example. My father has a PhD. My mother went back to get her master's after raising 6 kids, and she had a pretty successful career. But education was always sort of like, if you have that, you have everything. You have information to make decisions. And as a creative, I thought it was important to sort of understand data, understand analytics, understand quantitative sort of analysis, and really understand what a cash flow statement is.
Do you think it would be easier for you as an entrepreneur and as an African-American woman to walk in the door of a venture capitalist and say, hello, I'm going to ask you for millions of dollars if you've got an MBA behind your name?
Absolutely not. I still have to work a lot harder. Absolutely. An MBA is not enough. As a woman of color, an MBA, it makes the conversation easier. You do have a bit of more access. But if my white counterpart walked into the room with a college education and I walked into the room, they would most likely believe her and give her money before they gave me money for an African venture.
What do you think you need to do to prove yourself?
I don't have to fight for anything, I realize. I just have to do the work, focus, understand what my intentions are, and know the legacy that I intend to leave. And I believe that the values that I have, my grit, my hard work, being a Lagosian to the core, living in New York, is what I need. But also, I think support from friends, support from family, and allies, I would say. I say in order for change to happen, I can't make it by myself, absolutely. We need allies, and the allies necessarily are not always black people. So we need other people who do not look like us to vouch for us and say, you know what, she's done it. Let me give her a chance. It's not just about us, the community. It's really about others who are going to stand up for us and be like, we do want change to happen.
Aiana Fadina, we wish you much success in the future. Thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching Arise America in New York. I'm Sheila McVicker. We'll see you here tomorrow.